Okay, it's Wednesday, and you know what that means. It means Energy Day. Hawaii, the state of clean energy. We're not kidding. We got goals, and we have willpower. We're going to do it. My co-host, Ray Starling. Say hi, Ray.
Hi, Jay.
I thought you'd say that. Okay, now our special guest is Roland Clarke, PhD, Clarke Energy Associates from guess where? Barbados. The picture behind us is actually
That's Barbados.
We are, you know, virtually we are in Barbados now. We should all feel comfortable about that. And here on Hawaii, the state of clean energy, we're going to talk about comparative renewable experiences, referring specifically to the comparison of renewable experience between Hawaii and Barbados, and I guess you can talk about other places in the Caribbean too.
Of course.
Yeah. But first, before we get into that, we got to have a travelogue. And Ray is determined to find out more about Barbados. So, Ray, why don't you ask Dr. Clarke about Barbados?
Well, Dr. Clarke, can you tell us where, it's somewhere in the Caribbean, I know, but where is Barbados relative to Cuba and South America, North America?
Barbados is in the Eastern Caribbean. It's the most easterly of all of the islands, which means it is closest to Africa. From a tectonic standpoint, we sit on the oceanic plate for the Atlantic Ocean, and that tectonic plate is actually going under the Caribbean plate.
Oh my goodness.
It is for that reason that the Eastern Caribbean is a chain of volcanoes. Now, we are about...
Do we have a picture, a map? If we do, let's see a map of Barbados relative to other parts in the Caribbean. If we don't have a map right now, I feel confident that we'll have one very soon.
So yes, so we are the closest to Africa. We are north of Venezuela and Trinidad and Tobago, north and towards the east. We are about 4 hours from Miami by jet.
Okay.
Hawaii is about 6 hours from San Francisco. So that's an idea about distance.
Yeah.
And you know, because we are easterly located, we do get hurricanes like all the other islands, but for some reason the hurricanes are not fully developed as they pass our longest route.
No, cheer up.
Great.
But right now there is a new hurricane which is bearing down on the Eastern Caribbean right now.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Okay, luckily we have a picture now for you to talk about.
We have,
That is, I guess it's a picture county by county of Barbados.
Yeah.
Can you give us a little tour of the
yes,
map?
what you see there is the island of Barbados divided into church parishes. I personally live in the parish of St. Thomas, which is in the center of the island. The capital city, Bridgetown, is located on the, if you look down to the south and to the west, that is in the parish of St. Michael. They're all church parishes, and there are 11 church parishes.
Well, we can tell who the missionaries were that arrived on your
Focusing on Barbados.
You know, Barbados was physically charted on the maps. Soon after Columbus sailed in 1492, Barbados was charted probably around the 1516, 1517 by the Portuguese, but they did not stay.
They stayed in Hawaii.
They stayed in Hawaii. Then the English came to the island much later in that century, towards the 1670s or thereabouts.
Okay.
And the English claimed it for the crown. And then the English came again and officially established Barbados as a legal entity in 1627. Soon after the turn of the next century. So from 1627 until present, Barbados has been a legally defined entity.
Were they good colonialists?
The English were an interesting group of people. They loved to play cricket, and we loved to play against them.
Cricket.
You know, it is interesting that cricket is defined as being a very classic English sport. But the reality is that the game originally started in India. And around about the 1850s, the modern version of the game was created by the English and was marketed tremendously. So today, because of marketing and branding, English is associated, cricket is associated with the English.
Cultural arbitrage.
Similarly, we have the same case with tea. Everyone thinks in terms of tea being very, very English. But of course, there's not a single tea leaf grown in all of England.
Yeah.
It all comes from, actually originally it came from China. And I guess because of the Opium Wars and the negotiations between the government of China at that time and the British.
There is Barbados.
There
Yeah,
it
that's
is.
a large
Lower right-hand
region.
corner, see?
And we can see Barbados relative to other places. Couldn't you describe this map, Dr. Clarke?
Yes, what you see there, Barbados is to the right of the screen. It's pointed out in orange. To the south of Barbados, direct south, you have Guyana, which is on South America. Guyana is the only English-speaking country in all of South America. To the right of Guyana, not on your map, but to the right of Guyana, you also have Suriname, which is Dutch-speaking, and then French Guyana, which is Francophone.
Didn't they have a very infamous prison in French Guiana?
It is well known for that. Today, French Guyana is
You know,
known.
you gotta have an industry of some kind. So why not have prisons, you know?
Guyana is the country in which you do not want to drink the Kool-Aid.
Thank you. You thought we may have forgotten.
Yes, okay.
And then, of course, to the left of Guyana on South America is Venezuela.
And so you said you have actual oil on
Yes,
Barbados?
Barbados is perhaps the smallest oil-producing country in the world. I shudder to think what our people would say, but we do produce about 500 barrels of oil per day.
Really?
About 500. We used to peak at about 2,500. The oil production started back in the 1950s, 60s, and we export all of our petroleum, which is a sweet crude, to Trinidad and Tobago, to our south, for refining.
Oh, and it comes back.
And then it is returned to us, the energy equivalent is returned to us as bunker C or number 6 fuel oil to be used in power generation.
Do you get as much back as you give?
That's correct. And then, of course, if we do need more, then we purchase
You have to pay.
over and above. So, smallest oil producing country, people don't really think of us in those terms. We are not known for being an oil producing country.
No.
Interesting enough, we've also had natural gas. Now, the natural gas distribution system started in the late 1880s.
Oh, really?
Way back then.
Wow.
Natural gas is found close to my home parish in St. Thomas. North of that is the parish of St. Andrew. And our highest point is called Mount Hillaby. We call it a mountain, but it's just over 1,000 feet above sea level. The natural gas was found in that vicinity and then piped down south to our capital for the purposes of street lighting, gas street lighting. This is the 1880s.
That was popular for all around, right? Gas for street lighting in the late 19th century.
Yeah, and even more interestingly is our local power plants, our local electric utility company. The original legislation for that was originally tabled, and proclaimed in 1899. 1899.
Well, Hawaii beat you by a few years, having electric generation here. I don't know exact year, but it was in the late 1890s, I think, when
I
Hawaii
thought it was
first.
actually 1891 or 1892.
Oh,
Yeah, the palace here was first illuminated,
right,
and it was the
right.
first building in all of the United States. that was illuminated
Yeah,
Yeah,
by electricity.
yes.
and Princess Kailani pulled the switch.
Yeah. And Thomas Edison would have been active back in the 1880s.
Right,
and
right.
He had the opportunity to test his technology right here on Hawaii for the first time.
You know what else he tested here? The same man, Thomas Edison? Movie pictures.
Oh, really?
Interesting.
Yeah, he was showing, it didn't call it movies in those days, they had another, it ended with the word scope, some kind of scope. But he was showing scopes here, way back,
Cinescopes,
in his
maybe?
early adventures with movies.
Yeah,
I like that.
interesting.
Well, that's a great background on Barbados. Tell us about the electric system there, because I know that you're very much interested in generation of power, both with the fossil fuels now, and as we're beginning to see more and more solar, we get solar energy and renewable energy on the grid. So could you tell us a little bit about
And
that?
actually, before you actually tell us, we need to take a break. So try to retain that whole question, okay? And we'll come back. Ooh, I can hardly wait for the answer.
I'll repeat it.
Okay, that's Roland Clarke, Clarke Energy Associates in St. Thomas, Barbados, Caribbean. Here on Hawaii, the state of clean energy, we're talking about comparative renewable experiences half a world away. We'll be right back after this break.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Donna Blanchard. I'm the host of Center Stage here on ThinkTech Hawaii. Center Stage airs every Wednesday at 2 o'clock, and of course you can check out our archives on YouTube or on ThinkTech Hawaii anytime you like. Why should you do that? Because this is an arts show that I believe is making a difference in lives. We talk with artists of various ilk. We talk with painters and writers, playwrights, novelists, poets, sculptors, dancers, you name it, directors, actors, of course. And we don't only talk about what people do, but we talk about how they do it. And my favorite part of the conversation, we talk about why they do it. And it's really common on this show to hear people say, wow, I didn't think about it that way. And it's very common to hear people afterwards who have seen the show say the same thing. And I hear all the time that people are inspired by the conversations that we have. So why don't you join us and be inspired too? That's Center Stage on Wednesdays at 2 o'clock. We'll see you Center Stage.
Okay, as we left it in the cliffhanger before the break, Ray Starling, my co-host, was asking one of the most complex questions we've had in some time on ThinkTech. And instead of letting Dr. Clarke try to remember all of that, we're going to ask Ray to repeat it.
Okay. Simply, Dr. Clarke, could you tell us about your energy system on Barbados, the renewable and the fossil generation?
Yes. Barbados is served by a monopoly, the Barbados Electric Power Company. They hold a monopoly in the transmission, distribution, and sale of electricity. They do not hold the distribution on generation.
Oh.
And they never did. Now, the original Light and Power Act was proclaimed in 1899, and I had the privilege of advising the government of Barbados very recently on the reform of that legislation. So about 6 weeks, 2 months ago, a new act was proclaimed that provides a licensing regime for independent power producers utilizing renewable energy, particularly wind and solar. Now, that's large scale.
This is a big change.
Very big change. That's large scale independent power producers. Now, prior to that, for the last 3 years, we've had small rooftop photovoltaics installed in Barbados in great numbers as a result of a voluntary action by our local light and power company. They introduced voluntarily a feed-in tariff, which is quite unusual for an electric utility. And I will wager that it's perhaps the only utility on the face of this planet that has voluntarily introduced a feed-in tariff. In my humble opinion, I thought that they did it for the sake of public relations, just to say that they are good stewards, because they were aware at that time, this is about in the year 2010, that the government of Barbados was embarking on a major policy reform with an output of having renewables and sustainable energy. So this stepped ahead of the policy decision makers, introduced the feed-in tariff. The entrepreneurial community and the
Went
residents
nuts.
of Barbados took it up. And the reason for that is twofold. One, Barbados had already reached grid parity, like any other small island across the face of the planet. Grid parity meaning, of course, that it is economic. Small utility systems have relatively high prices because of the lack of economies of scale and other reasons. And the second reason why it became popular was because Barbados was already primed for the uptake of renewables, because we have had one of the first solar hot water heating industries in the world. In Barbados, on the thermal side, the research was done originally in Barbados at what is called the Brace Research Institute at the Belair Research Facility in Barbados, in the parish of St. James. That research was done in the 1960s, looking at a physical phenomenon called the thermal siphon effect. The thermal siphon effect, in a nutshell, means that there are no moving parts to your solar hot water. I know that in the United States, there's always a pump which circulates the water from the roof and the flat plate collector. In Barbados, there's no circulating pump. So you save
The
energy.
heat differential makes it flow.
That's right. You heat one part of a body of water, it becomes lighter in terms of density, and it moves because of the difference in density, because of the difference in temperatures in that body of water. So the thermosiphon effect, it was quote unquote invented by the Israelis in the 1950s, studied again and proven in Barbados in the 1960s, and then in about 1973, a local company was created, headed by a salesman, of course, plus a technician and one of the local priests in Barbados.
Of course.
A priest,
Of course.
yes. Well,
Well, that was a truly blessed event.
well, think of it this way. You're trying to sell hot water in a tropical climate. That's like selling ice to people in northern climates, right? A major challenge, so therefore you need to have people, leaders who understand the human condition and who can get a message over. So I think that priests and salesmen fall into that group, and of course they had a technician with them. The important thing there about the technician is that the skills required to develop the thermosiphon systems are the kinds of skills that you'll find in a polytechnic or a trade school in countries. So therefore, it is easy for such a technology to find a root and a foundation. So as a result, and with some government policy incentives, the salesman was smart enough to sell a solar thermal system, solar hot water, to our prime minister in about 1980. Up to that time, the prime minister had an electric water heater, and he saw the savings for himself. So therefore, as any good prime ministers would, he then passed that technology and benefit on to the rest of the country with a tax rebate. That is, customers can deduct 100% of the cost of the solar water
my
heater
goodness.
in the first year.
Don't say
from
that
their
too loud.
taxable
We'll be in trouble.
income.
That's a great incentive. So, is it that, like 100% of the people in Barbados did this? And
Barbados
so-
has 100,000 households.
Out of,
But we have 100,000 households,
total.
and 40,000 have solar hot
Right
water.
now.
Wow, wow.
That's 40%. So that's
that's a very high percentage.
we are the leaders in the Western Hemisphere in terms of solar hot water on a per capita basis. We are number 4 worldwide, if not number 3 worldwide. And of course, because there's so many houses with solar hot water systems on the roof, it may well limit the potential of the solar photovoltaic systems. because
That's true.
because of, everything has weight. There's a physical constraint to what
And
your
there's
roof
only
can
so
carry.
much roof
There's only so much
space.
roof space. The houses in Barbados are relatively small, so
Where do you get them? You don't make them. Who does?
these
make them?
solar hot water systems are manufactured in Barbados since 1973.
Oh, my God.
All of them, and there are 3 major manufacturers
Wow.
in Barbados.
Yeah.
3 major manufacturers. So it's very much a homegrown industry.
That's a Barbadian, you say?
Yes?
Barbadian.
Oh,
Is that the term?
okay. We have the name of the country is Barbados,
Yeah,
and the people of the country are Barbadian.
Barbadian. All right.
Barbadian, and then as time and as history will have it, that becomes corrupted a bit. So you have Barbadian, Barbadian, Bajan.
Bajan.
So
Short, Mr.
today-
Bajan.
All right.
Bajan. So today
Okay.
we affectionately call
Like
ourselves
Louisiana.
Bajan.
Cajun Bajan.
That's good.
Well, that puts you way ahead, but I wonder what happened with PV. You mentioned you had a pretty high concentration of PV also. When did that start?
Okay, photovoltaic started, the feed-in tariff program started as a pilot by the utility on or around 2010 or thereabouts.
5 years ago.
And they set themselves the usual target of 15%. All utilities always say 15%.
We used to have targets like that. You know our targets now.
So today, what they set themselves a target of about, I think it was 7,000 or 7,000 systems. And within 3 years, that target was met. So now, given the rapid introduction of solar photovoltaic systems at the residential level, these are all small systems primarily. There are some commercial sized systems, but not that many. Given the rapid introduction, the utility company has had to rethink its integrated resource plan, which was based primarily on thermal as usual, and also some considerations for large scale wind and solar, but primarily thermal. They've had to rethink that. And now, about a month ago, they actually issued a statement which said that, look, things are going so great in the renewable energy industry, particularly rooftop solar photovoltaics, that they're now resigning themselves to be smaller in the future and smarter, meaning the smart grid.
This is the industry.
This is the CEO of the Barbados Light and Power Company itself making that announcement about a month ago.
Sort of putting himself out of a job.
Well, I think what he is saying is that the future is inevitable and that he's therefore going to embrace the future. So maybe
What
his-
a novel idea.
No.
We need to get some Barbados water
Yeah,
brought
this
here
is-
so we can feed it to some of
Important
our
part of our
folks.
discussion, actually, Mr. Clarke.
Well, there is a little factoid that we must remember also in the case of Barbados. That is the permitted return on total capital allowed by the regulators. It's set at about 10%. Now, that's on total capital, which means that the return on equity is actually at about 16%.
Ah.
So think about it.
Excuse me, I got to make a call.
Oh, my goodness.
So look, from a utility standpoint, if you could
Makes
get
sense.
your customers to take on the headache and the risk of investment on the
Go
capital
for
side
it, yeah.
while making 16%, hey, sit back, relax, and enjoy your 16%.
Okay, maybe Ray and I both have to make a call.
That's right.
We're going to take a short break. We're going to make a call. We'll be back, and we're going to find out your role in all this, Dr. Clarke. Because I think you're being somewhat modest. We're going to find out what you do and what you had to do with this extraordinary development in Barbados. We'll be right back after this short break.
Aloha, I'm Keli'i Akina, president of the Grassroot Institute and host on Ehana Kako, a weekly program on the ThinkTech Hawaii broadcast network. Ehana Kako means let's work together. Think of the sad alternative, let's not work together. Here in Hawaii, with all of our diversity and the richness of the people, it's important for us to come together around issues on the basis of what's right and what's good and what's going to serve the common good. And that's what we try to do at Ehana Kako. Every week we interview movers and shakers, people in government, business, and other sectors of society to talk about how to create together a better government, economy, a better world here in Hawaii that can bless the rest of the world. I thank you for your attention to ThinkTech Hawaii, and we look forward to seeing you every Monday, 2 to 3 p.m. on the ThinkTech Hawaii Broadcast Network. We're Ehana Kako, and we wish you well. Aloha.
Make sure volume up, and I turn the headset volume back up.
Okay.
So,
I'm going to.
Oh, is this it?
Some more. Oh, we're back.
We're back.
We're back, we're live, we're here, Dr. Clarke. That's Roland Clarke. He's into energy management and policy. Oh, that's your degree at
That's my
University
degree.
of Pennsylvania.
that is correct.
Yeah, what
Master's
year did you
degree.
take that?
I graduated in the year 1995 with the PhD in energy management and policy out of the Center for Energy and the Environment.
And you had a specific purpose of returning to Barbados.
But yes, but immediately after my graduation, I taught for a short time at the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. And then after that, I did some independent consulting. And then I went into industry in Connecticut and Massachusetts. I worked for a consulting firm, Navigant Consulting, who had assigned me to their client, Northeast Utilities, out of Berlin, Connecticut. And there I was responsible for doing production cost simulations, calculating avoided costs for the energy efficiency programs, doing market research for the energy efficiency and demand side management programs, market potential studies, and so on. So my background in utilities was really founded in Connecticut and Massachusetts. I was in Berlin, Connecticut at Northeast Utilities for 4 years, and then I went on to Start Electric and Gas for a year and a half before returning back down to the Caribbean in 2002, where I became a Caribbean Community Diplomat, or CARICOM diplomat, at the Caribbean Community Secretariat in Georgetown, Guyana, on South America. And my day-to-day job was that of managing the Caribbean Renewable Energy Development Program, as well as coordinating the CARICOM Task Force on Regional Energy Policy.
At some point, though, you went back to Barbados.
Yes, so after leaving the Boston area, Massachusetts in 2002, I went down to Georgetown, Guyana, on South America, and spent 6 years there, and then returned to Barbados in 2008, where I founded my consulting firm, Clarke Energy Associates, in Barbados, and that is where I am still today.
Homesick, is that why?
Barbados is not such a bad place to be.
I got it.
Sometimes.
Let me ask, what is it tourism based there, like here?
Yes.
I mean,
Barbados has a lot in common with Hawaii. We are a tourist-based economy primarily. We also have an offshore corporate domicile industry. Barbados is a low-tax jurisdiction. The corporations out of Canada are particularly interested in Barbados. Not sure why the Canadians love Barbados so much.
Tax havens are always interesting.
So those are our two main industries. Historically, we've had sugar in Barbados, but that is not doing as well as it used to. We are currently looking at high fiber varieties of sugarcane in Barbados in order to produce a source of energy.
Oh, sugar as a source of energy, huh?
Yes, because Barbados was unfortunate to have lost its markets in Europe because of the world trade type issues highlighted by Brazil after the world trade.
Indeed, Brazil made, what's that fuel again? that you,
Gas
Oh,
alcohol.
ethanol?
ethanol.
Ethanol and
Brazil has the whole
gasoline
country running on ethanol.
Yes.
Which is a sugar-based fuel.
is a sugar-based fuel. So, they're very, very advanced in that. So historically, Barbados had a favorable trading regime for sugar in Europe, in England in particular. So did the other islands in the Caribbean, as well as, of course, Guyana and South America, etc. And because of that favorable regime, it was considered non-compliant with the World Trade Organization. Therefore, the Caribbean lost its markets in sugar and in bananas in particular. So because of that, our industry has died a pretty slow death. And as it turned out, Barbados historically was the home of research for new varieties of sugarcane. And as it turned out, when they searched the archives, they found that they had this high fiber variety that they had worked on, done some research on many years ago. So they resuscitated that and brought it back, and they've done some trials. I'm not sure what the outcome of the trials are. I don't think that the trials were as successful as they would have liked. But as you know, in the field of agriculture, it usually takes 12 to 13, 14 years
Yeah.
to do
Gotta
trials
develop the crop,
and
yeah.
to develop a crop. So, we need to give them some more time on that.
I'm just wondering, because, one of the things that we talk about here on the show and in the energy business in general is how to develop political will, how to find policies and initiatives that actually happen. And I just, in terms of our inquiry today on comparative renewable development, here and in Barbados, I wonder how the government works and whether there is political will to do this on the part of the people and the government, and whether it's getting done in a time frame that you feel is expeditious.
Barbados has a rather unique experience in that regard. Yes, there is political will. Yes, there are people like myself who are the advocates who promote renewables. But there was also a reality in Barbados, and that is the government of Barbados had a fiscal crisis. Therefore, it sought to get additional funding from one of its usual creditors, the Inter-American Development Bank. And within the context of that request for funding support, the Inter-American Development Bank imposed certain requirements. We call that a policy-based loan. And in this case, the policies that were to be implemented were focused on the renewable energy sector. So the Inter-American Development Bank was aware of the work that was being done by persons like myself at the Caribbean Community Secretariat in Georgetown, Guyana, beginning back in the year 2002. So the bank was aware of the advocacy work as well as the local economic situation with the high electricity prices. So therefore, I would say that while, yes, there is a political will from the people because of the history with the solar thermal systems, the solar hot water heater, you also had this imperative faced by the government of Barbados at the time. This was about the year 2009, 2010. Approximately, and the bank, being itself influenced by the advocates in the region, say, maybe we should impose policy requirements in the field of sustainable energy. So, in the case of Hawaii, I don't know if you have any looming fiscal crises here.
Well, and that I was going to ask the question. Let's say you were anointed as the energy czar for Hawaii with all power to do whatever you thought appropriate. Based on your experience and your training, what would you do? What would be the first things that you would put in place or do?
Well, the first thing that I would do is to scan the environment. Look at those factors, external factors to Hawaii that affect the economics and economy of Hawaii, see what the imperatives are. Once I understand that, then that will chart a way forward. In other words, I would not start with the technologies.
Okay.
Right? I will not do the proverbial mistake of defining and identifying a technology and then finding a problem to solve that technology with. No, you start with the overall environment, the business environment, the external environment. What are those influences here? We all know that some of it has to do with distance. Some of it has to do with the fact that Hawaii is largely an import economy. Some it has to do with the fact that the single largest industry here is the military. So there's some security issues as well. Those are the factors that I would look at first. Then from that, I would define some energy scenarios.
Okay. I have some questions on that, but I don't want to
No,
stop you on.
that's a good start.
Okay, so
We're
we
gonna have to have him
have
back.
big issues, which I'm sure you've heard about or even discussed in your classes. And I'd like to get your handle on them. Number one is, you mentioned earlier that there was a move toward utility scale solar, I guess.
Yes.
In Barbados. What were the reasons for that change of policy? And, you know, is it popular? Is it working? And should we do that? I mean, we do it to a certain extent already. But, you know, if there's good reasons for it, would you help us to understand why those reasons might apply here?
In the case of Barbados, the reason for utility scale has to do with economies of scale. For example, large-scale wind energy is by far one of the cheaper forms of renewable energy. Small-scale wind, however, on the other hand, is one of the more expensive. It's more expensive than solar photovoltaics. So, large-scale wind, for sure, if the resource is here, if, you know, and of course, defining a wind energy resource is a very technically involved discipline. Why not? In the case of Barbados, when I first started working in the government of Barbados back in 1983, I think it was, one of the first things that we did was to embark on a study of the wind regime in Barbados. And at that time, the utility company wasn't interested whatsoever in renewables, but we in the government were. And we defined a nice site in the northern part of the island, and, you know, fast forward to today, the utility company is now very much interested in that site and in developing wind. But as life would have it, once the landowners get wind, no pun intended, that there's an interest, then all of a sudden,
The land prices go up.
the land prices go up, and they always seek an alternative use for that land, particularly in the tourism sector.
So the whole thing defeats itself.
That's right. And Barbados is not a country where the government would impose things. The Barbados government is historically will leave it to the private sector to make its own decisions.
I guess I hear you saying that Barbados is a country that believes in transparency and listening to the people and operating in a relatively democratic, responsive way. Am I right about that?
Yes, you are right. We have been very good at that. So Barbados is now about 47 years old, 48, and we have been blessed with politicians who have been very respectful of the will of the people. Of course, Barbados is not perfect in that regard, but we have been blessed thus far. I do hope that it continues that way.
Well, to make the renewable comparison then, we here in Hawaii, one of our major industries is protest. We protest everything and forever. I mean, it's years. The half-life of a given protest is a long time. So I guess my question is, you said that, 40,000 homes had done solar thermal. That leaves 60,000 that haven't. Why? Do people oppose this? It seems to me it's a good idea. You have the factories right there. You have a government who's tolerant and wants it to happen. Why? What happened to the other six? Are they protesting?
No, the other 60,000, it has, I believe, it seems to me, it has to do with the quality of the housing stock. And the fact also too that some houses are multi-family houses and that therefore does not lend itself to having an individual system on one's roof. There are not that many multi-family housing units in Barbados, but it is an issue. I would say it has to do with the quality of the housing stock. I mean, you know, there's several homes in Barbados, physical houses, which can withstand and have withstood hurricanes over the centuries.
Yeah.
But but physically, from a civil engineering standpoint, they're not necessarily the strongest houses. So to handle wind, but they can handle
Wind.
wind.
So what about your house, Dr. Clarke?
Huh?
You have a house with PV?
Huh?
You have a house with solar thermal?
We have had solar thermal probably for more than 25 years. So that's what we have. We do not have solar PV as yet, but we certainly have solar thermal.
Let me ask you to repeat. Did you say that the utility was actually just a T&D utility and all of the power production was like independent power producers?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, what I said was that the utility company had a monopoly over transmission, distribution,
Oh,
and
okay.
sales, but never a monopoly over power generation.
Ah.
However, it did produce all of the power
Okay,
up until very recently,
Okay.
because no one else had any interest in generating
right,
power.
right.
It's interesting that Barbados is a tourist destination, a major international tourist destination, but many hotels do not have backup power. That's a statement about the quality of the operations
Right.
of our local
Okay.
light and power
And it
company.
makes your tourist experience much more adventurous.
But
You do have hurricanes in the Caribbean.
Well, if there's a power cut and you have no air conditioning in your room, then maybe you might want to spend more time on the beach, maybe.
Before Ray summarizes, as he always does on our programs, let me ask you one more thing. You are attached right now to the School of Engineering, and you're teaching the comparative experience in renewables.
Right.
If I'm watching this program and I wanted to get, and you're consulting, you've met with some of the big players in renewables here in Hawaii and given them the benefit of your knowledge. But if I wanted to get to see you, talk to you, if I wanted to come to a class or a presentation that you're making, how could I do that? Where do I find you?
Okay, just as a matter of correction, I am with the Renewable Energy Design Laboratory, which is headed by Professor Reza Garbadi. And through the professor, you can reach me. The professor and his center have a website. My attachment is in the area of research primarily. Also, I'm assisting the center with developing a 4-day training workshop to be delivered somewhere in the Caribbean, most likely Barbados, during the month of October. And that workshop will be on smart grid modeling and control for island utilities. So that's what we are working on. I myself am doing a literature review on the planning methods for demand side management, demand response, and renewables, how those planning methods have evolved over time from the 1990s until present.
This will be in Barbados?
The workshop that we are planning is most likely will be in Barbados during the first full week of October this year. So we are working on the plans for that right now as we speak.
Okay, and if I go down there to participate in the workshop, this is entirely, completely tax deductible, am I right?
Barbados is a paradise, and we have
Everywhere.
in every way.
Okay, Ray, why don't you summarize?
Well, Dr. Clarke, we appreciate your being here, and we've only just begun. We have to catch you. Will you be coming back after going back to Barbados?
Yes, I would hope to return to Hawaii from time to time, maybe during summer each year, for example, to the university here, continue the collaboration.
Well, I honestly believe you've got a lot that you could offer to us here in Hawaii, because you've seen how you have handled things in Barbados, which is another island environment that we could certainly glean some information from you as to how we might do it better here. So maybe when you come back, we'll get you anointed as the energy czar, and you can actually make some things happen.
Well, thank you very much.
But we appreciate your being with us today.
Well, Ray, I'd like to thank you very much for this opportunity to make a presentation to the good folks here in Hawaii. Jay, I thank you very much as well. And I thank the Public Policy Center at the University of Hawaii for making this all possible. Thank you.
Great.
That's Roland Clarke, Clarke Energy Associates. Thank you so much for being with us.
Cheers.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Aloha.